Welcome to the Advancement Podcast. Our mission is to reach the lost in America by advancing leaders and churches so that communities are transformed. Join us as we discuss how to stay healthy as leaders, work in teams, and lead change. Come on, let's advance together.
All right, you ready? You ready? Welcome back to the Advancement Podcast. It's great to have you today. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, if you could click subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you are listening to, that way you get the content every Tuesday and Thursday. If you could also rate us, that will help us out a lot. If you're watching, click like or subscribe on Facebook. Subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Todd Barham. I'm the host of the Advancement Podcast, joined as always by the lead consultant of Advancement, Tim Ware. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing well. This is episode 92. 92. You're right. 92. This
92.
Is episode 92.
92.
Counting down to episode 100. That's a milestone, man.
Only 8 more to go.
Only 8.
Yeah. So, are we doing some giveaways that you want to talk about?
We're going to be doing some giveaways. It's in the ad that's running.
Oh, we got an ad. Okay, so pay attention to the ad.
Pay attention to the ad.
Because we're giving away some good stuff here at
Yeah.
Advancement. So, Tim, how things been going in your world? Good, I hope. What?
Yes.
Have you watched any baseball games?
No.
None at all.
None.
Okay.
None at all. I'm telling you. I think right now it's my opinion that professional sports, other than maybe golf or tennis,
We don't need
well,
them.
it's pretty well. Yeah, I have decided that they're kind of almost a waste in my life. COVID pushed me away from that. I know you're still avid. I did see that as a recording day, there was a brawl and they broke the rules yesterday.
Who?
The Astros and the Angels.
Oh, weird. Well, yesterday, the Rangers were playing the Angels. So was it the Rangers and the Angels?
Maybe it was this. I guess it was sometime this weekend. It was on
really?
the news this morning. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I
didn't watch the news this morning.
The Angels had a pitcher that charged the dugout. I mean, a player that went to first base and charged the dugout. And anyway, so who knows?
Broke the COVID rules.
Broke the COVID rule. All the benches cleared. People on the ground rolling around, doing that whole kind of stuff. And
a lot of baseball players have been breaking COVID rules, going to restaurants and clubs they're not supposed to be going to, and all kinds of stuff.
Well, how many and there's already been 4 or 5 teams that are basically not playing because of outbreaks amongst their team and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I just think if they're really concerned about COVID, then there's no room for any professional sports or college sports or high school sports.
As the date of this recording, there's whispers that they might kill college football, which I know everybody's sad about, but
Well, let me have my opinion for a moment.
It's your podcast, so you can do whatever you want.
Well, I think that wouldn't be all bad because I'd love to see educational institutions be about education and not, other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what a concept! Education institutions are about education, not athletics.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, that's my little soapbox moment. I'm just kind of, and what love I had for baseball, the idea that they're doing the DH across the board.
Yeah,
that's just horrible.
So Tim's preaching the approach of getting back to minimalism. Is that
no,
what you're?
I'm not. I did. There's a great book.
I was trying to do a good segue.
There is a great book I read a couple of years ago. It's called. It's by a guy named Greg McKeown, and it's called the. Oh my goodness! Let me pull it up real quick on my Kindle. It's
such a great book. You can't even remember the title.
I remember the author. I was trying. I had the title, and I thought, I need to be able to tell everybody who it is.
Your brain.
The Art of Less.
Art of Less. Okay.
Something about. Anyway, while we're looking it up, because minimal. I'm not a minimalist.
Okay.
Necessarily. I am not, but I am certainly not
You're more of a minimalist than me.
Oh, for sure. I'm not somebody who's, but that's not really that's not the topic of the day. It's not about minimalism.
It's the law of minimums.
All right, here it is. It's called essentialism.
Okay.
The Disciplined Pursuit of Less.
Okay.
It's actually a really interesting book.
So interesting you couldn't remember the title.
Shut up. Point here is that what we're talking about today is the law of minimums.
Okay.
Not being minimalistic.
Okay.
Now,
I was trying to get a good segue.
Do you know any hoarders?
I know a lot of hoarders.
Do you have any true hoarders?
I can't say who I know because they might listen to the podcast. But
stacks. I know a couple, and I mean it's like the stacks of magazines. And
although when I watch hoarders, I say to myself, I could be just as easily a hoarder as them. You know, it's,
oh really?
Well, because you see, many of the hoarders, they went through a trauma in their life, and that's why they're hoarding. I don't know. We may go too far into that, but
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going into that.
And a lot of it is they lost a loved one or something, and that's why they started hanging on, and it just kind of snowballed and spiraled downhill, and then they end up on A&E on a TV show. So,
well, I don't watch hoarders, but I do know a couple. But this is not about hoarding versus minimalism.
Yeah.
This is about leadership.
Yeah, we're doing awful on this intro. So, what is the law of minimums, Tim?
The law of minimums is really about a leadership and management principle. You only have 100% of your energy. You only have 100% of your time. You only have 100% of your staff. You only have 100%. And the idea that we should give 100% to everything,
it's not possible.
The math doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So we call this the law of minimums because the idea is, how do you determine where you should put your energy and how much energy should you put there? How much time should you invest? How much of your staff? How much money? There's only so much. So how do we manage those pieces? And so we call this the law of minimums.
Okay.
When you go to you're doing jiu-jitsu now, right? So you're not. Are y'all doing jiu-jitsu during COVID? Okay.
Yeah.
You doing it with a mask on?
We have to wear a mask when we walk in, but not when we're rolling. Really, a mask would be pointless while we're rolling; it would fall off. So
you're a constant contagious possibility.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But
so before you did that,
but we roll with the same person the whole time. So
before you did jiu-jitsu, you went to the gym in a more traditional workout stuff. What was one of the things that they did to make sure that it was true? It was healthy.
The gym. I didn't go to the gym. I haven't gone to gym post-COVID.
No, pre-COVID. This is back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
This is back in the day.
They would always
jiu-jitsu.
They would always sanitize.
No, not that. I'm
in the COVID.
Yeah, you got into COVID. No, what they would make you do is rotate. You didn't just do. If all you did was pump
legs,
your arms all the
day,
time.
Leg day, chest day. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, you move those things
you move
around
between muscle groups.
Right.
Yes.
You move between muscle groups. Why?
So that you don't have an enormous arm and chicken legs.
Well, because it's healthy, but also it's not just about one type of thing, because you can there are alternating exercises, because if you just do bench presses and you never do pulls, right?
Yeah.
Then
you're only working one part of your muscle.
And what happens is those other muscles that are tied to that will become overpowered, and you'll do damage. That's where you end up with tears and things. So you have to rotate so that you work all the groups, and you have to do them in different directions, because it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's not healthy to push one portion or one thing all the time above everything else.
Okay. We do that in jiu-jitsu too. We work different attacks, different guards, different placements, because we're not always going to end up in the same place.
Right. So the law of minimums says we need to ask ourselves, what's the minimum we need in this area to achieve our next goal, to achieve success, not maximum.
So what you're saying is we need to find the minimum to move the needle.
Yeah.
The minimum amount of effort that we need to do as an organization to move the needle forward.
Even as an individual. So there was Christian Schwartz wrote a book a number of years ago, and when he launched what's now International Ministry, and in his book, he has this picture, and he talks about barrels, old school wooden barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that the water or the liquid will only stay in up to the height of the shortest slat.
Yeah.
And what our tendency is to always we always want to raise the slat that's our favorite slat.
Right.
But the law of minimum says I have to take energy from this one and come over here and raise, because I'm only going to go as this lowest common denominator. There's always something, and I have to move. And if I move this up, then I'm going to have to move something else up. And it's a progressive move around. And it's the same way in church. It's the same way in all leadership situations. So the law of minimum says, okay, what's the minimum that we need to do in all of the areas we're working in to achieve the next level?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that means if we do it by percentages, that one area may take 50%, and the other 5 areas, if you want to divide them up that way, they would only get 10% for this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then but one drop behind, now it's going to get 20%. So
yeah,
this is what leadership, where the balance between leadership and management is, because management's going to always just try to keep everything the same, and leadership's going to push or management's about keeping things calm and safe, and leadership is really that visionary piece of pushing and pushing and pushing. But you got to balance between. I have to do both.
So you say we have to focus more on, or not, we have to figure out that not all of our focus should only be focused on the Sunday morning experience.
Oh boy, isn't that awesome little revelation right there? Or
I know that's where you're headed. So
well, it's one of the places. If we could even say that Carrie,
only the adult is not the only focus.
Well, Carrie Newhoff wrote a blog that came out as of our recording date that even talks about the fact that in today's COVID world, we can't just focus on the people in the building. We talked about that in our last podcast, that you have to recognize people online, and it's not okay anymore to say, well, that online's an afterthought.
Yeah.
It has to be just as important as in the building.
Right.
And our tendency, we all put lots of effort into our online, but then we started meeting again, and it dropped in the priority list. But when it drops, okay, and that's fine. If you're saying we're not trying to, if we don't believe that the gospel is going to go forth through that, don't put any energy into it.
Yeah,
that's fine. I'm okay with that. But you just have to know that if there is an impact there, it takes energy to lift it.
Right.
Let's take a moment and hear a word about advancement.
Do you feel like your church is stuck in a rut? Then we've got the answer for you here at Advancement. Do you need some personal coaching or maybe some leadership coaching? We can help you out. Contact the Advancement team at info@advancement.cc or check out the website at advancement.cc.
Now let's get back to the podcast.
Well, and I think sometimes our constant struggle as a pastor is not always throwing all of our energy at the things that are screaming at us the most. Sometimes we have to take a step back and find the things that really need our focus, because usually what's going to be pulling our focus is drawing our focus inward instead of outward. And so You know, I think sometimes my struggle as a pastor is to pull myself away from the things that are barking at me the most, because those usually aren't the things that need my most attention.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think it's also that we have to recognize it's not just about the squeaky wheel. It's not about our favorite thing. But I think sometimes we also, personalized like yours, the all-in guy says, well, we just go and put all this fall off in that hole and everything else falls by the wayside. We get it. It's hard to maintain balance. That's part of what this is about, is maintaining a balanced approach.
Yeah.
Because silos develop when one group says, well, we're all important, and it's all about us, all about us, all about us, all about us. And they're trying to take and garner and gather all the resources all the time. But as you said, sometimes it's youth, sometimes it's children, sometimes it's the nursery, sometimes it's Sunday morning, sometimes it's senior adults, sometimes it's, it's these different things. But we have to be willing to work on these things. So the first thing goes back to something we've done podcasts about and we've talked about multiple times. You have to say, okay, what's the next, what are we trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. There has to be a definable objective. We say SMART goals. Mm-hmm. What's the goal for this season? And when I'll coach guys to set goals, we're going to ask traditionally, we would ask attendance question. We're going to say, what do you want your attendance to be at the end of this season? Some guys say, we want to just be flat. We want to be the same. We don't want to lose. Okay. Some will say we're going to grow, whatever. What's your goal going to be? How many people do you expect to come to faith in this season? How many people do you expect to get connected to the church? How many people do you expect to be water baptized in the evangelical churches, that I work with? As you walk around the block, you have to ask, there's a variety of things, and you say, okay, if this is what the picture looks like at the end of 6 months, at the end of a year, at the end of COVID, if that's what we want it to look like, what's the minimum we have to do in each of these areas to live? Because when I set my goals like that, then that's determines where my limitations are. Uh-huh. And I can't pour 100% into one thing. When all the churches were shut down, we poured 100% into the online presence.
Sure.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did it.
That's what we had to do.
It's what we had to do. But as soon as we started meeting back, this is a great example, because as soon as we started meeting back, most people's online energy went down.
Yeah. Yeah, it was helpful for us. We were doing online before, so we kind of maintained. We threw a little bit more energy into a couple things, but we've settled into. We were above what we were doing pre-COVID now on our online presence, but we've settled into kind of a happy medium post. But what would you say to the pastor that's listening, and there's going to be the one right now that's listening, and even the talk of giving more energy overwhelms them? What advice would you give them?
Well, I'm not asking people to give more energy. I'm asking them to take energy from someplace and put it somewhere else.
Okay. How do they decide? Decide what to do?
So I had a pastor some years ago. He was going through some of our processes, and we were talking about assimilation, connection. You need to connect. You need to be intentional about creating a system and connecting to newcomers and connecting guests and connecting people who are new to the faith. And we worked through his weekly schedule, and he was putting no energy into that. No one on his team was. Uh-huh. So the first thing he did for the first 6 months was he said, I'm going to put 1 hour in my calendar, block it out, 1 hour a week that I'm going to work on that personally. Okay. This was a church of, about 250 to 300 people at the time. And that means he had to take energy from somewhere else. We said, what are you not going to do this?
Yeah.
And the reality was, what he realized, if he did that he would put 52 hours a year, which is more than zero.
Yeah.
And the church began to see an increase because of it, because he had to steal energy from somewhere and be disciplined about doing this. I think that historically in the church, pastors would preach Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, maybe somewhere in between. You're preaching. So all we did was sermon prep.
Yeah.
And now we do do fewer services, but we often will try to spend an awful lot of that same amount of time in our sermon prep when we don't need to.
Yeah.
So that's a place you might be able to steal time. So this is about, what about your family? Where do I steal time from to make sure I protect my family?
Yeah.
This is sometimes a struggle for me. I get a new project I'm working on and I'm excited about it and I want to dive in there and I push hard. But one of the things that I need to be maintaining drops because I took too much energy because I was so excited, and now my other things have fallen off because I've fallen below what the threshold is for minimum success.
Yeah.
So this is about pulling energy, the old analogy of spinning plates.
Yeah.
I have to do it over here, but I have to go over here.
It's a balancing act.
Right.
And that's for me the biggest struggle of pastoring. Where do I pull my energy away? Because for me, the things I like to do aren't always the things that push the church forward, and sometimes I have to balance the things that I like to do versus the things that push the church forward, and that's the biggest struggle.
We all like to do what we like to do.
Yeah.
None of us like to do what we don't like to do.
Right.
If we don't like to do it, then we usually will try to avoid it.
Yeah.
So this is where you staff for it. Staff for your weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Staff for your weaknesses. I'm working with some leaders right now, and it's the mundane stuff that wears them out. And I said, you've been putting off hiring an assistant.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because that person could do those things. The things that I think it's Michael Hyatt that talks about the things that steal energy from you. I think he calls it your drudgery zone.
Okay.
What are the things that you do it and you go, I know I have to do it, but I hate this.
Yeah.
Well, there's a good possibility there's somebody out there that's energized by that same thing.
Right. Yeah. Some people love to do the things you hate.
Yeah. Now that's organizationally, you just have to, to be able to do those things. But just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean as a leader, you're not still responsible for making sure it gets done.
Yeah.
And being responsible for paying attention to the whole organization and going, okay, we need to now take a little of the energy that we're putting over here and move it over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we've hit the minimum threshold. And it will always move like that. On a y-axis, on a XY axis graph, if you graphed it, there should always be seasons of climb and a little settling. It should be kind of almost like a staircase. The healthy pieces. There's short plateaus where we're making adjustments, and then we move farther in our growth cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really it. It's about, most people don't want to stop. That's the other thing. When you've had something that was successful, you don't want to pull energy away from that. You just want to keep going. Well, we'll just do it again, do it harder, do it stronger.
Right.
But you can push that thing so far out above everything else. It's like what we said earlier with working out. Now that muscle is so much stronger that it's doing damage to other places. I was working with a church where they were all about worship.
Mm-hmm.
They were all about worship. They were a church of 120, 130, and they put probably 40% of their budget into worship. They had studio quality equipment. I mean, they were if it came out and it was new and it was fancy, they got it.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to work in any children's ministry or volunteers, or it wasn't that they wanted to hear the pastor. They just didn't want to miss worship.
Yeah.
And the only thing that mattered to the church, everybody talked about, was worship. And yet the church was struggling because this silo had developed. Because what happens if you don't manage the energy, it becomes like a growth, and it begins to suck all the energy. Yeah. It creates a vacuum. And so we have to, and then you have to lance it, and there's a whole lot, then it becomes a problem. Mm-hmm. So managing your energy by using the law of minimums, teaching the law of minimums. I mean, how many times have I said to you, what's the minimum you need to do in this area?
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks maximum. But if you give the maximum one place, you have nothing left for everything else.
You just need the minimum to move the needle forward.
That's it. Yeah. Law of minimums. What's your takeaway?
I would say is that, you only have 100% to give. What is the best way to divide up your 100% that get the most? You ask me all the time, where do I need to focus my energy to push the church forward? Do I need to take some energy away from one place that's easy for me and put it in another? And I also took away staff your weaknesses, because if you hate doing admin work, maybe you need a stellar admin.
Our tendency is to hire people who are like us, because then then it's fun.
It's fun, and it's easier to work with them.
But
because they're just like us.
But we get less long-term accomplished because we didn't we don't release additional gifts into the mix.
Well, and the church already has a you. It doesn't need another you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a great image of when you read the Old Testament, in I think it's Numbers. There's a place, or it's in Exodus. That's where it is. There's a place where the Lord says, it's Exodus at the Red Sea. The Lord says to Moses, take the staff that's in your hand and stretch it out, right? And if you go to Joshua chapter 8, Joshua is Moses' successor.
Yeah.
He's trained by Moses, right?
Right.
And in Joshua chapter 8, the Lord says, take to Joshua, take the javelin that's in your hand and stretch it out. Two leaders, two different, same nation, same vision of settling the children of Israel in the promised land, and two different gifts mixes, and just a great imagery there of the shepherd versus the warrior and the season that was needed. And so, sometimes it's just things we need different to accomplish what God's trying to do.
Yeah. It's good.
All right.
Thanks for joining us this time on the Advancement Podcast. We'll
see you next time.
If you would like to keep this content coming, all Tim and Todd ask is $1 per show. See how to give, maybe even sponsor an episode or series on the website advancement.cc. Until next week, continue to advance the mission of Jesus.